What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Five Pod. I'm your host, Kyle Morello. Across from me, virtually, of course, Jake Copestick. Cope, how we doing? Big Five basketball. We kicked it off this week.
Yeah. Big Five is back. College basketball's back. It's the best time of year, in my opinion. So, I was really looking forward to this opening slate of games, but I'm just happy that games are back. Just to having basketball back on TV. I'm just looking forward to getting back into the swing of things and watch some football. And now we're here, so let's break it down. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely. There's really not much better than college basketball, specifically college basketball in the city of Philadelphia. So we're back to bring you some more coverage on that. And we had some games on Monday. So we're going to get right into that right now. First game, we're going to go with the inner city matchup between Villanova and LaSalle at the Finn. Villanova, of course, outlasted LaSalle 81-68. Honestly, I think the Explorers played a lot better than a lot of people were anticipating them playing, just because it's the talent disparity there is a little much. You were at the game, though, of course. So what did you see sitting in the stands there at the Finn?
So, I just want to say, like, if you ever get a chance to go see a game at the renovated Finner Pavilion, I know it's been renovated for a couple of years now, but it really, really is a beautiful place to see basketball. Like, the structure of it's unique. You feel like you're right on top of it. There's really not a bad seat there. So, I definitely want to say that because every time I've only been there twice, but both times I walked in there, I just want to take a lap around and look around. Really, it's cool with everything. But getting to the game on the floor, obviously it was a huge night off the court. We knew that coming in with Kyle Neptune playing or coaching his first game at Villanova, and then obviously Fran Dunphy come back to his alma mater, finally being the head man at LaSalle. Kind of went. I don't want to say as I expected. Like I've been telling you, Kyle, telling a lot of my friends since the Jay Wright news came down, and then seeing all the freshmen that kind of recommitted to Villanova and said they were going to stay there. Like I would be more worried about how Villanova was going to play without Colin Gillespie, not having Justin Moore for the first portion of the year, and then now missing Cam Whitmore with his thumb injury. And I was the coaching things. Like I said to you before we were filming, if you put a curtain down on the sideline, you couldn't see who was coaching the game. You just saw the players on the floor. You would swear Jay Wright's still there. It was the same Villanova team we've seen for the last 20 years. The same values, the same culture, the same, chemistry that they have as a team was on display. And then with Sal, like you were saying, people expected Villanova just kind of roll over them. But when you have Fran Dunphy on the sidelines, that's not how it's going to be. I was really impressed by the way this team played in the second half and the way they fought. Nova shot the lights out in the first half. They were up 14 going into the break. They were shooting threes well. They were taking advantage of their opportunities. Caleb Daniels was unconscious, as I thought he would be. He had a lot of big shots for Villanova last year. It was a very steady offensive presence for them. So I expected him to have a good game. But South didn't go away quietly. They ended up making this a close game. It got down to 10 or 11 points in the second half, and I really like the fight from this team. The Drame brothers, they're everyday guys. They're obviously coming from St. Peter's. You know what they're going to bring. They're going to bring energy. They're going to be consistent in the way they play. They're going to defend. They're going to play with energy, and it was really good to see. First of all, it was great to see Fran Dunphy back on the sidelines. If you're a fan of this sport, let alone a fan of this sport in this city, it brought a smile to your face to see Fran Dunphy back on the sidelines.
He is Mr. Big Five.
Exactly. You'd be hard pressed to find a guy that's made as many stops as he had in the city. So, it was a good game. It was what I expected from Villanova. I was supremely impressed by the fight of LaSalle in the second half for them not to go away quietly. They're still battling for boards, still getting offensive rebounds and getting free throw opportunities in the second half. So I was impressed with them as well. So overall, it was a great game. It's great to get back in the swing of things for college basketball, especially in the Big Five, and kick it off with a game like this with so much surrounding it going into it. I was just happy to be there.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, it looked like from what you put out on social media and texted me, it looked like a great environment. Need to get to a game at the Finn this year. That is definitely on my list. Obviously the Palestra is number one. Fun fact for all of you out there, this is like so sacrilege considering that we have a Big Five podcast, but I've actually never been to the Palestra, which is something we can get into a little bit later when we talk about Penn and stuff. But I know we've talked about it as friends, the last few years that need to get there, but I'm going to be there probably within the end of this month. So that's going to change, but yeah, it's a little embarrassing to say, but it's true. But back to this game at the Finn. The one thing, well, there's two things I want to point out. One, you mentioned Caleb Daniels was unconscious. He went 6 of 7 from three. Villanova as a team shot 65% from three. It's just the kind of performance, kind of like you said, just seamless between Jay Wright coaching style and Kyle Neptune, where it's just you're going to get that hard-nosed basketball, but you're going to get the fundamentals. And shot making ability of this team is still as good as it was last year when the team went to the Final Four. I've seen new faces, but not with Caleb Daniels because he's been there and he clearly showed that he's the player on this team right now with Justin Moore out, with Cam Whitmore's injury, that he's the guy. He's the guy who's going to take them to where they want to go. But on the flip side, I want to talk about Josh Nickelberry. I know in this game last year, he really, really struggled. Not this year. 7 of 12 from the floor, 5 of 9 from three, 22 points, 6 boards, 2 assists. He had a steal too. Really all around great performance from Josh Nickelberry. What did you see from him being there?
Well, I thought he was just playing with a lot of confidence. Like the last episode we taped, I referenced that when he had to play Villanova and Temple back to back last year, and LaSalle took a step up in competition against their Big Five opponents, he was 0 for 7 in both those games, and he didn't make any shots. The only points he had were on free throws in the Villanova game. So, he was playing loose, he was playing confident, and it's when you have a guy like him who shoots the ball, and we know all about his talent. He was a top 100 recruit going into Louisville. When you see one go through the basket, it starts to look a little bit bigger for you. So he was playing loose. He played with a lot of confidence. And at the end of the day, like when you're making shots, like it totally changes your demeanor. You look to attack more. You look to shoot more. And he was able to get some open shots and knock some down. So you probably heard me talking. I don't know if you listened to the show. Probably not. But, it was good to see him. Yeah, we'll see. But it was good to see him get back into a rhythm. And, this LaSalle team is going to be a lot more interesting if he becomes that player that everybody thought he was going to do. I'm not saying he has to do this every night because he played terrific. I don't really know. Again, everybody's got good games, but if he can be a steadying, just a 3-point shooter for them. If he can knock down shots for them, kind of be an option A to go to an offense, this makes this team a whole lot more interesting if he's consistent.
Yeah, I mean he's a very, very important piece for this team. Obviously, we talk about Brickus and Brantley too, and the Drame brothers. They're obviously other very important pieces. Brantley actually played well too. I just wanted to point that out before we moved on to our next game. But yeah, I mean, he is probably the key cog of this team. And if they want to have any success in the A10, the Big Five, just their entire season this year, he's going to need performances like this. He's going to need to step up and be that guy to show all the guys around him, hey, we can do this. We're in this fight too. And I'm going to lead us to where we want to go. So shout out to Josh Nickelberry for the game that he played against Nova. And like you said, last year he didn't do great against tougher competition against Nova and Temple. This year seems like it hasn't phased him so far. So good for him. All right. Now this game that I want to go to next, it's a game that we talked about a lot pre-show. And I want to steal your thunder first. I want to, usually I let you go first talking about the X's and O's and everything, but this Temple Wagner game, obviously if you don't know, Wagner went into Philadelphia at the Liacouras Center and beat Temple in overtime, 76-73. It was not a good showing from the Owls. I would like to break a few things down real quick, and then Cope, I will let you do your thing too. But went back and watched the film of this game. There's a few things I want to point out. First of all, they didn't play bad the entire game. Actually, a lot of the game they played fairly well. Wagner also was probably better than they were last year when they played Temple too. They definitely improved. So I want to give them credit where credit's due. I don't want to discredit Wagner at all. They played a heck of a game. But Temple was up 11 with a little under 4 minutes left. Some things started falling apart. First thing I want to point out, there was back-to-back possessions around the 3-minute to 2-minute mark in that range. Nick Jourdain and Heiser Miller tried to do a high pick and roll, and Jourdain set probably 2 of the laziest screens I've ever seen in my entire life. One of them wasn't even a screen. He kind of just went up, and then Heiser Miller tried to cut a little bit, and he just opened up toward the basket, which you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, if that's something that you think Aaron McKee's coaching them to do, because I know sometimes slip screens like that, you don't always, make contact with your defender, but it looked like this is what he was trying to do is, it looked like making contact with the defender was the goal here, and just nothing. And then you obviously saw Heiser Miller try to make a different decision. Now, one of them, Caleb Battle, missed an easy layup, and then the other one, Damian Dunn, got a charge. So those are also things that should be corrected and things that Temple didn't do well in this game. But those 2 pick and rolls, and there was a couple other in overtime too. Just inexcusable. Like if you're making a screen, you have to be able to run and have the defender run into you. You're taught that in every level of basketball. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know if that's something that you can point out after I'm done that Aaron McKee, maybe taught them. But also the pick and roll defense too. There was a few key possessions down the stretch where they were going under screens, there was miscommunications, and they let Wagner back in the game with 3-pointers. That's literally the one thing that gets inferior teams back in games, is shooting well from 3. And they let them do that. They were also up 8 with 140 left, and some of these things were still happening. So it was just an all-around bad performance. They were also in foul trouble. They didn't shoot well at all as a team. I think they shot, I have that up here, 38.9% from the field, 25% from 3. Damian Dud led up with 29 points, but 18 of those were from the free throw line. It was kind of like we were talking about before the show, where they battled with teams last year and they won ugly games, and they got out uglied in this game. So that's my spiel. It was my rant. I want to hear your thoughts now.
Yeah, so like you said, the last episode we played, with all the injuries they had, I lauded Temple for their tough performances, for them to win on the defensive end, to win games in the 50s in this. Not exactly win pretty, by some people's measures, but it was really, really discouraging, in my opinion, to see them get beat the way they did, because they played against a Wagner team that doesn't have a lot of size, and they had a lot of movement in the offseason. So what happened was, you have Bashir Mason, who was the coach of Wagner. He moves up to St. Peter's, takes Shaheen Holloway's job. Shaheen Holloway then takes the Seton Hall job. And then Donald Copeland, who was an assistant at Seton Hall for 1 year, but had been at Wagner for multiple years under Bashir Mason, now takes this job. But they had players graduate. They had players leave. They lost 4 of their leading scorers and rebounders this year. And to see them get beat the way they did, like I said to you pre-show, and I do this anytime I look at a box score before I watch a game, I always look at rebounds. That's the first thing I look at. Usually, if you can win on the glass, you have a way better chance of winning. You can get second and third looks on a possession. It doesn't matter how bad you shoot. If you give yourself more opportunities to score, usually that just leads to winning. See Temple not only get out rebounded by this team, but on the offensive end, get beat 12-9 on offensive rebounds. And, Ramir Moore had a huge offensive rebound in overtime and on a putback layup to put Wagner ahead. Like, it's little plays like that where they're getting a smaller team is battling on the boards. They're getting offensive rebounds. They out-scrap Temple. Team that I lauded last year for being like, hey, they're scrappy. They'll stick their nose in a rebound. They'll win. They'll defend. And to see them, after all, I said all that in our last show, and then to see them get beat this way, very, very disheartening, especially with the schedule that they have coming up. They have to play Novo on Friday, have to play St. John's, have to play Rutgers, they have to play Vanderbilt. Very disheartening to see that, because this was supposed to be a game that you kind of chalked up as a W. And that's not to take anything away from Wagner. Delani Hunt played very well. Ramir Moore played very well. Ramir Moore did sit out last year. He transferred from St. Joe's, but there you go, kind of circling back to beating the Big Five. They get hurt by another Big Five. These guys came ready to play. They were extremely physical. Some of the fouls, I think were a little questionable. When you have Jamil Reynolds, who's almost 7 foot tall, 280 pounds, like sometimes the refs will be like, hey, if there's a guy that's banging on you, just got to go through him. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you don't get those calls because you're such a big guy playing against people that are smaller. But to see them get beat the way they did, especially on the glass, like it's really just inexcusable. I was really hoping for a lot more from this team, not only in this game, but just for the rest of the season. But then see them come out the way they did, to get out scrapped, to get out hustled, and then to get out rebounded by a team that's way smaller than them, especially bringing in the height that they did. It's not good. This is a very, very bad start for the year. And they do play a pretty good non-conference schedule too. So it's only going to get way, way tougher. And they're going to see teams that not only play like this, but also have the physicality and the athletes that are better than Wagner. But
now I will say, not to interrupt, but I will say, I see some people saying it's doom and gloom for Temple after one game, that their tournament hopes are over. Let's pump the brakes on that a little bit. It was an ugly loss, but it's one game. They play 30 something. There's a lot of season left. We play a lot of good teams. We play a lot of teams that we can beat. They'll find a way. I have confidence in Coach McKee. I have confidence in this team. They're very talented. They just played an awful game, and they have things they need to clean up. They have communication issues. They have fundamental issues that they need to clean up. And obviously shooting was brutal. But they're all things that can be cleaned up and be worked on. So I'm not gonna say that this is, Temple's done. Because Temple's not done. They're a good team. They're gonna make some noise this year.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can't go off one game here. It's a very, very long season. They're going to continue to have opportunities where they can score a big win. They have one coming up on Friday. I mean, hey, if you win this game against Villanova, I'm not saying it completely takes away this loss, but like you have other
Makes it feel a
opportunities to
lot better.
continue. Exactly. You have other opportunities to continue to build your non-conference resume, when it comes to tournament time. And we're a very long way away from that. Somebody asked Aaron McKee in his press conference, like, this is a bad non-conference loss for you to have in your tournament resume. It's like we gotta play the next game. You gotta take it one game at a time. Obviously you gotta think big picture, but you gotta take things one day at a time. This is one game. They're gonna have plenty of opportunities, especially in the non-conference against good teams that will be right up there.
We'll be able to tell the mental fortitude of this team by how they move on from this game.
Exactly. And they're gonna play good teams. They don't have any time to sulk over this. They have to get better. They have to look at the film and they have to communicate a lot better on defense. They left some guys way wide open that I really didn't see from them last year. Like defensively and toughness and rebounding, like this is not what I saw from them last year. So obviously it's a disappointing start, but it's a long season. They got more games. Well, they have come up with. Obviously, yeah, not what you want to see. Point I just want to touch on real quick while we're still on Temple. It went a lot to Jamil Reynolds to start the second half and to try and get some easy buckets inside against a Wagner team that was playing very physical and fouling a lot and didn't have the height to match up with them. But they couldn't do that in the first half because he picked up 2 fouls in not even a minute and a half. You look at what happened there, and he got beat on an offensive rebound. They missed a block out, and a guy gets an offensive rebound, and he gets called for an over the back because the guy kind of undercuts him and grabs the rebound from him. And then he fouled the guy where he went straight up on a floater, but unfortunately he didn't come down straight up when he came down on the guy and he got called for a second foul. So it took away their want to pound the ball inside a little bit in the first half because he got into that foul trouble. But in the second half, they started out, they got him some touches. He was able to get some easy buckets. But, a lot of guys were in foul trouble. That also kind of stalled what they were planning on doing. And from the very, very start, your starting centers got 2 fouls in under 2 minutes. So it kind of threw things off for them. So all around, just not what you want to see. They're going to have to get better. And I think they will because I hope they can't play any worse than this. Sorry.
Exactly. And yeah, like early foul trouble was hard to come, and everybody was in foul trouble the entire game. So that's something that won't happen every game, and hopefully that'll lead to better results in the future. And we'll talk about that other game on Friday in a second. But we're gonna get to another game that happened on Friday. First, we're gonna have Penn versus Iona. They played in New Rochelle. Surprising result, honestly. I didn't know if they were going to win this game, but I did not think they were going to lose by 28. Iona ended up winning 78-50. Your thoughts of that game? I mean, it was an ugly one for Penn there.
Yeah, definitely not good. The first thing I want to come out and say is, clearly Jordan Dingle is not 100%. He had a high ankle sprain, was in a boot for a little bit, and he only had 5 days of live practice before this game started. And you know anything about Iona? And you know anything about Rick Pitino? He wants to turn up the pressure. He wants to turn up the heat. Like I said at the end of our last episode, I was interested to see how the guards, especially Jordan Dingle, would hold up if Pitino decided to press. And listening to Rick Pitino's press conference after the game, he kind of noted that he was like, "Hey, like we're lucky that Dingle wasn't 100% because this is a legitimate pro prospect right here. But because of that, we wanted to wear him down. We wanted to wear his legs down. We wanted to press him." And it started out a little ugly for Iona. They're not a great three-point shooting team. You look at them last year, according to KenPom, they were 202nd in three-point percentage. This isn't a team that's going to shoot the lights out. And they lost a lot of their three-point production in guard play from last year. So in the first half, Penn went to a 1-3-1 zone with Lucas Monroe at the top and Max Lloyd at the middle. And it really stalled Iona. They went 6 minutes without scoring. They were tentative. They were hesitant. They were thinking a lot and playing slow. They were very easy to defend. And that, and had a little bit of a lead. They were up 5, 6, 7 points there in the first half because of the defense they were playing. But then Iona kicked up the pressure. They dictated the rest of the game. They dictated the tempo in which the game was. They sped up and they forced them into early shots in the shot clock, forced them into 18 turnovers compared to Iona's 5. And they played at their pace. They're not a great 3-point shooting team. They'll run some good half-court offense. Patino's team will. But they sped the game up. They got out in transition, and they got easy buckets. And that ended up being the difference in the game. As soon as that press went on, Iona got some energy on offense. They were playing a lot more free. They were playing fast. They were playing aggressive and going to the basket, aggressive and trying to get the ball into the paint, kick out the open guys. And that's really, really game ended here. Got to watch out for Iona because I did watch a lot of them last year. Like I was saying, you probably before we started here. Iona lost a lot of guys from last year. Dylan Von Eyck moved on. It was their sixth man. Tyson Dolly and Elijah Joyner, who was their starting backcourt, they moved on. They brought in this guy, Dennis Jenkins from Pacific. I wasn't really sure, how exactly that was going to translate just because Tino kept saying in the offseason, I need to get a superstar in the portal. We're losing guards. You need a superstar. But he really looks like a diamond in the rough for the Gales here. He was very fast. He had 19 points. He played with great energy, great defense. Was able to slide with Dingle, with Slacker, and defend these guys very well. So potential guy to watch out for with the Gales is their new point guard, Dennis Jenkins. I was not expecting him to have the game that he had, especially with everything that Iona lost. But getting to Penn here, you look at the 18 turnovers they have when they got sped up on the press. And then you look at Jordan Dingle with 4-14, didn't have a great game shooting. Didn't look 100%. I'm sure that will continue to get better as he plays more games and gets his legs back under him. But to only have 5 days prep and then to go into this game and play against the team that wants to run, wants to press, obviously it probably wasn't going to be good. But Jordan Dingle, Clark Slackert, and Jonah Charles, they were combined 18 for 3. They are going to win 0 games if that's the case, and that's how I shoot. And you have to give
shot
credit to Iona.
3-25 as a team. I mean,
yeah, it wasn't good. You have to give Iona some credit because they played very, very good on-ball defense. They played aggressively in the passing lanes. They made Penn work just to catch the ball. They played very aggressively on the catch. They want to force you out on the perimeter. They contest everything. They fight over screens. You have to give them credit where it's due with the defense that they played. But also, these guys just had some wide open shots that they missed. They'll fall. They're way better shooters than what we saw on Monday. But when you turn the ball over 18 times and that trio of Dingle, Clark Slacker, and Jonah Charles shoots 0 for 18, you are going to win no games that way. So that's just what it was at Penn. It was a rough shooting game, but it was when Iona turned on the press and set up the game, dictated the tempo, and didn't allow Penn to get back and set their defenses where this game turned. Penn just never got their legs back and never was able to read.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the shooting numbers really stick out to me because 12% from 3, like I just mentioned, 3 of 25, 32% from the floor. It's brutal. I mean, you're not going to have games like that all the time. Like that's an anomaly. When you look back at the end of the season, you're just like, wow, that was an awful game. Unfortunately, those games do happen, credit to Rick Pitino and Iona. That's, like you alluded to, that's their brand of basketball. They're going to press you. They're going to force you to make bad decisions. They're going to play you 94 feet. And they did that. So, sorry, I got to throw. There we go. Listen, there's diseases going around. It's November. So, there's a lot. Everyone's getting sick now. So, but I digress. It was just a perfectly executed game plan from Iona. And Penn, like you said, is too talented of a team to only score 50 points in a game and shoot the way they did. They're projected to be the top of the Ivy for a reason. So, just like Temple, we'll move on from that game. That game's not going to be indicative of their season. They're going to play other quality opponents, and they're going to play them a lot better than they played Iona. So, I'm not worried about the Gales. Plus, Jordan Dingle will get healthier. Knock on wood, as the season goes on. So, I'm not worried about the Gales, or I'm not worried about the Quakers rather. But it was a rough game. We will say that. So that's all I have on that one. But we have another weekend ahead of games that I'm extremely excited about. A lot of quality teams playing each other. So let's go down the list of games we are looking forward to for this weekend, Friday and Saturday. And we're just going to start off with the biggest game in the Big Five, biggest game of the week. Could even be arguably of the Big Five season happening already. Temple Nova at the Liacouras Center on Friday. Obviously Temple coming off an extremely rough loss that we alluded to. Nova coming off a solid win against another Big Five opponent, LaSalle. What are we looking for in this game? Tell me some things that you're looking forward to seeing, whether it's on Temple side bouncing back or Nova side continuing what they did well against LaSalle.
Well, I'll definitely try and hit on both of them. But for number one, you just want to see Temple come out with some energy. this is going to be a huge game. Might even sell out the League Sports Center. They haven't played Nova at home since before the pandemic. I was at that game, and Nova did not really play a good first half. Temple had a ton of
I
energy. The
was too,
crowd was
actually. I
behind
remember
him in
that
the
game.
first half. And Temple played really, really well. But then Nova did what they do to make adjustments with Jay Wright. That team with Sadiq Bey, they had Gillespie. Slater was still there, Jermaine Samuels, Justin Moore. They still had a great team that year. And what they did was they make adjustments. Jay Wright's such a great coach. They with what they do, and they shoot, they pass, they defend, they wear you down on offense. The shot fakes, the pass fakes, the defense just gets completely scrambled. And what they did was they go on what I call the patented Nova kill shot at the end, where they wear you down, they cut at the lead, they get the lead, and then just slowly, methodically on offense, they just wear you down. And they take long possessions, they move the ball around, they get open shots, and that's just what ended up killing them at the end. These teams have not played each other since then. With the COVID cancellation last year and the year before, you take away the fact that some of these Temple guys have not played Villanova, maybe with the exception of Damian Dunn. So it's going to be tough because Temple's coming off such a bad loss. But just show me some energy. Come out firing, come out defending very well, come out trying to attack the basket on offense. And for Nova's side, I thought Monday was a very workmanlike performance from them, but they're just going to continue to do what they do. I'm not going to say they have to improve upon anything. We know it's going to happen. We know Slater, Dixon, and Daniels are going to take the bulk of their shots, and these other guys that they're starting to work in are just going to kind of fill the cracks for them. But the thing about Temple is if they're going to come out lazy and they're going to turn the ball over and they're not going to defend, Nova's going to kill you. You're not on top of your game. This is Nova's not a team that is going to beat themselves. So Temple pretty much has to play lights out after what we fought today. Come out with some energy. Crash the glass, get some offensive rebounds. They have height again with this Wagner game. Temple's got height on Villanova too, but Daniels and Slater and Dixon, these guys bang so well down low and defend the post so well that it really doesn't even matter. They're not real 7-footers. So Temple, just show me some energy. Come out, rebound, defend at a high level, get the crowd behind you, and maybe you have some room for an upset here. I really wanted to come into the segment, Kyle, telling you that I think Temple could upset Villanova. After what I saw Monday night, I don't really know how I'm supposed to say that when Nova looked like the well-oiled machine that they always are on Monday. So I really hope Temple can keep this game close. I hope that they will, and I think that they will. And I think that they'll show you something and they'll come back because they really need it. They can't afford to have another dud at home here. So I'm going to take Nova in a close game because I don't know how I can take Temple from what they said. What they did on Monday, and Nova looked like the same Villanova that we've seen for the last 20 years. This team isn't going to beat themselves. They're going to play the great fundamental basketball that they always play. But I hope Temple gives them a game, and I think they will. But I think ultimately,
yeah, I mean, I also think they just need to come out, like you said, with energy and just defend is the important thing because this Villanova team is shooters. They're obviously very well coached, even though obviously it's the Kyle Neptune's first year. But some of the players there already know the Jay Wright way, and I think Kyle Neptune's kind of trying to keep to that in a way. Also, obviously, have his own ways he's doing things too. But the Jay Wright way worked, so I think it's definitely smart to keep that around a little bit. But just better communication by the Owls too. Like we had mentioned with the pick and rolls and that's more effort. That's another thing. They need to come out and just play with effort, dive for balls, set screens the right way, switch on screens, communicate on defense. Like I was just saying, like you can't leave if you leave Wagner shooters open like that, you can't leave Villanova shooters like that. And that's no offense to Wagner, but this is the bottom line. Nova's, as John Rothstein says, it's the Fortune 500 company. They're just really good, and you can't let Caleb Daniels shoot 6 or 7 from 3 like he did against LaSalle. You can't let Eric Dixon bully you. You can't let Chris Archidiakono hit shots. You have to be on your game at all times. And then on Nova's side, just keep playing the way you were playing against LaSalle. Keep, kind of like that workman mentality, like you just said. Go in, do your thing, do the fundamentals, know your game, know what you need to do to win. Let Temple make the mistakes because they obviously can, and they're the younger team, and they're the less experienced team. They don't have Final Fours and championship experience and whatnot. So let them make the mistakes. Don't make the mistakes yourself, because if you make mistakes, Temple's going to find a way to get back in it because that is their DNA from last year. They didn't show it a ton against Wagner, but that's their DNA from last year, and they have a lot of returning guys from that team, and obviously Aaron McKee, that's in his DNA as a coach too. So that's the bottom line there. Just make sure that you're playing your game and you don't let them get in it with unforced errors. So that's what I'm looking for. I do think it'll be a close game. I think Nova does end up winning, but I think Temple shows a much better performance than they did against Wagner. So that'll be an exciting game, though. I know you're going to be in the building for that. I'm not going to be in the building for that, unfortunately, but you enjoy that, and hopefully we see a good game of basketball. Moving on, we have a team that hasn't played yet, so we haven't really talked about them. So we're going to talk about them right now. St. Joe's is taking on Houston, which admittedly is a rough matchup. Houston is they're one of the better teams we've had over the last, honestly, I want to say 5 years. Calvin Sampson's doing a hell of a job down there. Marcus Sasser's coming back from injury. They have a lot of people returning from last year where they were damn near Final Four team. If they make a few shots against Nova, they're probably moving on. And this St. Joe's team, like we have mentioned in the first episode, they have a lot of turnover. Jordan Hall went to the NBA. And now there's some news today that came out where they're having one less person on the bench. I'll let you talk about that. And also just what do you expect this game to be?
Yeah. So first getting to the game, like I almost kind of feel bad for St. Joe's because this is not a team that
It's a
you
brutal
want to play
first
your first
matchup.
game against. It is as bad as you can get. Because for a team that's got a lot of turnover, that's missing a do-it-all guy on offense like Jordan Hall, who's a catalyst for them, who could bring the ball down the floor, who could get them into offense, who could score for them, who could shoot for them. Him moving on, Taylor Funk moving on, Jack Forrest, Amir Bishop, like not having guys that played a lot of minutes for them, and now kind of having Eric Reynolds be that guy. This is kind of his first game being that guy on offense who's going to bring the ball up, who's going to have the ball in his hands a lot of time and have to create for guys. Like this is not the team you want to see. This really is not the team you want to see. You know, the way Houston plays, like they are a joy to watch play basketball because they play with their hair on fire. Their energy is always great. The way they move defensively as a team, take away the middle to not allow you to drive in, you know, doubling, helping, everything that you want in a defense. And then my favorite thing that they do is the way they crash the glass on offense. They want it more than you, and this is the way they practice. This is not just the way they play. They practice these drills where they crash the glass on offense, where they're diving for loose balls. So this is what makes them great and is why they're the program they are now. But getting Marcus Sasser back as a first-team All-American, who a lot of people think of the year. Von Mark comes back from a shoulder injury. But also having guys step up that, you know, kind of were bench guys for them this year. Look at a guy like DeJuan Roberts is going to be playing a big man for them now. You know, he's only 6'8", 6'9", but makes up for that with his strength and his athleticism. The one thing I will say, and it's probably the only knock you can have against this Houston team, they don't have like legit 7-foot size like St. Joe's can roll out there with Ejike Obina and Charles Coleman and Anton Jansen. It's not what they have, but they make up for it with their toughness, their physicality, and their willingness to rebound. So this is a really, really tough first matchup for, you know, with all the guys leaving and now having more guys that are going to have to step up. Eric Reynolds is going to be asked to kind of be the guy on offense now. You know, when you're working through some things with some young guys still, this really is a tough matchup for you to have. So I don't think anybody expects St. Joe's to win this game. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out for him. But just sit back and enjoy how good this Houston team is. St. Joe's, it doesn't matter what the result is. They will only be better for this because they're going to go up against a team that is legitimately playing for it. So they'll only be better for it. If it looks bad, fine. They're young. They're learning. They're continuing to build for the future here. So it may not look pretty. They may be working through some things with some young guys, but trust me, they'll only be better for this when it comes down the road and you have a team that's kind of rebuilding and reloading like they are right now.
Yeah, and having those young guys get experience is underrated. Obviously you don't want to lose games like this, and you don't want to. I'm not saying they're going to get blown out, but they just damn well might. You don't want experiences like that, but also those help mold winners. Those experiences help mold winners. That's just the bottom line of it. Unfortunately for one young guy, he won't be able to play in this game or any game this year. Crisis Ndoko. News came out on Wednesday that he is ineligible for this 2022-2023 season. Sounds like people were kind of expecting this on Hawk Hill. So I don't know how much of a surprise it is, but someone we mentioned on the first episode, a talented young 7-footer. What can you tell me about this news that he will not be playing for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so like you had mentioned, I think a lot of people kind of expected this and for him to kind of redshirt. And like I said, in the Billy Lang era at St. Joe's, yeah, maybe there hasn't been a lot of winning going on, but their AD Jill Bodensteiner came out and said that she was going to give Lang another year. He brings in some good recruits next year. He's got Xavier Brown and Anthony Finkley from Philly coming in, so he's got some good guys coming in next year. He had Christ in that mix as well. They're building, they're continuing to build for the future here. He's getting recruits in the city, and now he's going to add another guy to his class. So a lot of people expected this, and like I mentioned in the first episode, between Obina, Charles Coleman, and Anton Jansen, there's three guys that have been in the program for some years that are ahead of him. So, him being the fourth center, playing behind a lot of guys that are already experienced anyway, maybe he wouldn't have hit the floor so much. So a lot of people expected this to happen and for him to kind of redshirt or just be ready for next year. So, I don't think this is necessarily like a bad thing almost. If he's not ready, he can practice with the team and then he'll be ready to go next year. But it didn't look like he was going to be able to crack the rotation anyway, just with the guys and the experience ahead of him. So we'll see what happens next year. Now we know, we have a guy to monitor for next year with the class they have coming in. So they're continuing to build for the future on Hawk Hill. So what? Get a year under your belt, practice a little bit, and we'll see you next year and see what you got.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, unfortunate that he has to sit out, but at the end of the day, it could be good just to, practice for a year and we'll see what happens. I think things are looking up on Hawk Hill, which is the important part. So we love to see that. Quickly, let's get into these couple last games for this weekend. We have Penn taking on Mizzou. It's always fun to see teams in a lower conference take on teams in a power conference like the SEC. What do you expect from this game? Do you expect, Penn to kind of play like they did at Iona and kind of lay down to a team that should have more talent than them, or should they play up to the billing of potentially the best team in the Ivy League this year and give Mizzou a run for their money?
Yeah, I definitely think the Penn comes out and plays a little bit better. Again, like I'm going to continue to monitor how Jordan Dingle looks. Sorry, keep getting big five.
Listen, there's a lot of Jordan Hall in our mind right now.
Exactly.
We were on Hawk Hill there.
Exactly. So, I'm going to continue to monitor his health to see how he looks. Because unfortunately for Penn, like if you have your 20-point per game scorer, best guy on the team, ball handler, guy with the ball in his hands all the time, not looking up the bar, it's not going to be good for the rest of the team. If your top dog isn't doing that, I don't really know realistically what to expect from him right now. He did, clearly wasn't 100%. He got subbed out very early on in the Iona game, but I think that they'll start to come back to level here and they'll shoot the ball a little bit better. Mizzou's a good team, but they're also working through some things too. They just hired Dennis Gates from Cleveland State, was formerly an assistant at Florida State. Thought he did a really good job at Cleveland State. He got him to a tournament during the COVID year. And now he moves on to Mizzou here after a quick pit stop there. He adds in a lot of transfers. Gets Isaiah Mosley from Missouri State. Gets Nick Honor from Clemson. Noah Carter from Northern Iowa. They're kind of retooling here a little bit too. Obviously, he's a Power 5 school now. So it'll be interesting to see like kind of how his team looks. I'm looking forward to this game to also get a little taste of what he looks like. But it's also a new team with a lot of players and a new coach still. Penn's definitely going to have the experience there when you look at the guys that they have, and obviously Steve Donahue's been there a long time. So we'll see how this game plays out. But this game, like the result kind of hinges on how Jordan Dingle looks for me. So we'll see. Obviously he didn't shoot that well. They're playing against the Power 5 team. It's going to be able to roll out a lot of bodies. So we're going to see how it goes for him. But, anytime you take a step up in competition, especially Power 5, that's just what it is. So we'll see what happens here. Obviously, I think this game hinges on Jordan Dingle. But this is a Mizzou team that's retooling. They got a lot of talented guys they brought in. So I'll be interested to see kind of how they look as well. Don't expect Penn to win this game because I do think this Missouri team could actually surprise some people in the SEC. The guys they brought in addition to me liking the higher Dennis Gates. So I don't expect Penn to kind of win here because also these guys are going to they're going to have the athletes to defend them. And if they can't get shots up, if Iona's going to defend them very hard, I'm sure Missouri is going to be the exact same way. So, but again, it's a tough non-conference game for them. I like the Penn does this. They played Florida State last year. They played at Arkansas 2 years ago. It's good that they're moving up. But I don't really know how much I can expect from them because they didn't play too well in game one, and part of that, Jordan Dingle is not 100%.
Yeah, definitely need to see his health. Would love to see him healthy and running up and down the floor like he does and controlling the pace of the game. But I don't know if that's going to happen because it doesn't seem like he's 100% yet. Hopefully he gets there at some point soon because, like you said, they do a pretty good job scheduling non-conference. And you definitely want to see them do well against non-conference teams because it'll help their tournament resume. Obviously, the Ivy League's a one bid league, so it's not like they're going to get that large anyway. But still, I mean, seating wise, things like that still matter. Come March, so definitely want to see them try to play up to competition, but we'll see what happens. It should be a good game. Hopefully he shows better health than he did on Monday, but we will see what happens. Finally, though, one last game this weekend in the Big Five, and that is LaSalle taking on Wagner. We are back with Wagner. I'm going to root for LaSalle in this one to avenge, obviously, the loss for Temple, but I'm going to root for all Big Five teams, no matter what. But this game will be interesting. I mean, obviously, Wagner just coming off their win against Temple at the Leocore Center. It was a big one for them. And LaSalle played decent against Villanova. We went over that earlier. They didn't, obviously they didn't win. I think the talent disparity there is too big of a gap for them to overcome. But they have an extremely experienced head coach, Fran Dunphy, and they have some guys there. So what do you think of this game? Personally, I think LaSalle's going to come out and win, and they're going to avenge Temple. I think that they match up decent with this Wagner squad. Both pretty guard heavy squads, but I think the Drame brothers will also help LaSalle in this game, and I think Fran Dunphy will be able to rally his guys to a victory here. So that's what I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna go right with you too. I think Tom Golarita, hey, it might sold out. Fran Dunphy is held in a very high regard around there, obviously being an alumni and being a Big Five legend he is. So I'm hoping for a pretty raucous atmosphere. It's a shame I won't be able to be there because I'll be working the Penn football game against Harvard. So I wouldn't get 8-1. But unfortunately, I won't be able to be there. But I do think Temple. Temple. I think LaSalle's got to win here too for Fran Dunphy and Wagner. Does not do the Big Five double here, winning back-to-back games in the city. Really love. So I really like this. Is really really good match. I'm excited to watch this game on film and play it back because, like you said, this is a very guard-heavy game here, especially with Wagner and all the guards that they have. But I think this is going to be a scrappy game. It's going to come down to rebounds, like I said. But I think, like you said, the Drame brothers are going to help. They're going to need their size. They're going to need Rokas Chocius rebound and the Drame brothers to rebound. But I think they can get it done here. If you like scrappy guards, this is your game with Delani Hunt and Ramir Moore, and then Brantley and Brickus for LaSalle. These aren't the biggest of guys, but they're dogs. They're very hard to stay in front of, and they're going to go at each other all game. So I like LaSalle to win a close game here. It's going to be scrappy. It's going to be a lot of defense. Teams are going to be going 8-10 guys to the glass at once to rebound. So I'm actually really looking forward to watching this game back on tape. I think LaSalle speaks out a close one. And hey, let's see how Josh Nickelberry can play. If he has another 20-point game, I think there's a very good chance LaSalle plays out. So I think LaSalle gets it done for Fran Dunphy's homecoming. I'm sure Tom Golarina is going to be crowded. There's going to be a lot of people there one. But give me LaSalle to squeak out a close one, and to like you said, avenge Temple's loss on Monday.
I love that we agree on that because I mean it's going to be a really fun game. Obviously this Wagner team could play a little bit. They showed that against Temple, and we'll see what LaSalle does in their response to their loss to Nova. So that'll be a very interesting one, and Tom Golarina should be a very good atmosphere for that game as well. So looking forward to that one. That's pretty much all that we got. Any last thoughts there?
Yeah, so I said something to you pre-show that I definitely wanted to speak on. I wanted to speak about the John Gallagher situation. John Gallagher being a guy who's a Big Five guy, who was an assistant at LaSalle for a little bit, actually interviewed for the job there this past summer when the Howard got fired and the job opened up. So he's been at Hartford for a long time. He got them to their first NCAA tournament during the COVID year. Ended up losing to the eventual champions in Baylor. But the fact that they won the America East, they knocked off Vermont, they beat UMass Lowell in the championship game. It was a great feel-good story. You always heard John Gallagher saying, "We're building a neighborhood here." You work in very small D1 and you work at the low major level. It's all about the relationships. He always, players that he's coached years ago that he still keeps in contact with, keeping those relationships. But he always just saying, "Harper, we got to build a neighborhood. I'm your neighbor guy. You got to build a neighborhood." It was a great feel-good story. Hartford had never made the tournament before. He got this team to beat Vermont, who had run the Americans for years. Gets them to the tournament, and he was rewarded for that tournament berth by his AD telling him that they were going to begin transitioning from the D1 level to the D3 level. for all that he had done there and all his time there, and then finally getting. So he finally resigns earlier this week, and citing basically like player safety issues within the program. They had played an exhibition game at Dartmouth where they did not send a trainer with them, and the player got hurt and hyperextended his knee. Apparently the family reached out to him, and it was not nice. And he was like, "Hey, it's right doing so. Like, we didn't do right by the student athletes here, and it's an issue of player safety." So there was some people that were saying that it was a bad move by him to leave right before the season started and not it out. It's going to be one of their last years in D1 as they continue to make the transition to D3. They're not in the America East anymore. They're an independent D1 school here. So, they're not in a conference as they begin that training. But, I did just want to touch on this because, there was some people that were giving him some flack for leaving right before the season. But I just want to say, like, when you have an administration that clearly does not have his back, does not have his players' back, does not even want to send a trainer there, like, it really is disappointing because a couple of years ago, this was a feel-good story. I was really rooting for this team. It was fun. It was a great story. They had finally made the tournament, and he's such a great guy with great values and really loved being at Hartford. So to see it happen the way it did is very, very disappointing. I'm sure he'll land on his feet. He's a Big Five guy. He was at LaSalle for a little bit. Like I said, he had an interview for that job. I'm sure he'll land on his feet, and it might even be back to the Big Five. Maybe we'll be talking about him soon. But just kind of wanted to touch on that. As I just thought it was fitting. It's a Big Five pod for a Big Five guy like John Gallagher to unfortunately see him resign from his position at Hartford. So just thought it was necessary to talk about. I wish him all the best, and I hope he lands on his feet sometime soon because he deserves it for all the time he put in there. And to see that his administration did not have his back or his student athletes back, it's really disappointing to see after what was a really, really good feel-good story a couple years.
Yeah, he deserves better. I remember that Hartford team that got to the tournament against Baylor. I mean, I remember we were watching it. We were rooting for them when they upset Vermont, and then they beat UMass Lowell, and it was a great team. I mean, they weren't a great team, but they were a team that made some noise in the American East, and they were fun to watch. And it's a tough story. But John Gallagher, he's a Philly guy, big guy, Big Five guy, like you said. He'll get back on his feet somewhere, hopefully in the city, because that'd be really cool to see. But he's a good basketball coach, and he's a good dude. I know you said he got slack for leaving, but it clearly was not his fault. When your back's up against the wall like that, you have to do what you have to do, and he did what he thought was right. So don't blame him whatsoever. But definitely good nugget there to end the show on. We wish the best for John Gallagher on this podcast, and we hope he gets back on his feet soon because he absolutely deserves it. But that's all we have for this episode number 2 of the Big Five podcast. Very much looking forward to these games this weekend. A lot of great basketball to be played this weekend and in the weeks going forward. So we're very, very much looking forward to that. Thank you guys for listening and tuning in as always. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Big Five Pod. Make sure you subscribe to this silly little podcast on YouTube here and Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. Thank you for your support. It's been great so far. And yeah, that's really all I got. So we will see you early next week.